Everyone, welcome to another Animation Friday. Apologize this video has to be uploaded late. Unfortunately, I was relatively busy over the weekend, but I should be caught up by the end of the day. So without further ado, let me address what I wanted to address for this Animation Friday, and that is Mickey's Christmas Carol. This is a short or slash special that came out in the 80s, actually. Back in a time when Disney really wasn't doing all too much. Despite it being in the era of Disney not being as productive, this still is one of the standouts, I think, as far as these kinds of little shorts and specials of Disney is concerned. And I think it also stands to being probably one of the best animated Christmas Carol versions that are out there. When you really look at all of the different animated lineups that really do try to really capture the essence of the Christmas Carol story. But it's basically what you would probably expect from the short to do, which is to take all of the characters that are from A Christmas Carol and give them the characters of the Christmas Carol. So in other words, Scrooge McDuck is none other than the character, I believe his name is, or at least the last name obviously is McDuck. I always forget if that's actually his name or if they just changed it for this particular special. But because I rarely see him actually in a lot of the shorts that I've seen as far as Disney is concerned. But Scrooge McDuck is one of the characters, but it's not Donald Duck. McDuck is, I believe, his uncle, technically, from what I can tell, and then, or the uncle of Donald Duck. And Donald Duck is also in this as well, and he plays, I believe, the nephew Scrooge, if I'm not mistaken. And then you also have Mickey, who plays Scrooge McDuck's coworker, and you have Goofy, who plays the partner that ended up passing away, that was Scrooge's partner within the Christmas Carol. So again, it takes all of the characters that you know and love from Disney, in particular Mickey and Friends, and inserts them into A Christmas Carol based upon what they thought would be a good idea to place. And I think all of the character placements, at least who they assign to who, at least within this version, I think is actually rather good and gives off a good effect overall. And what I think also works too to this short's advantage is the fact that it kind of tries to be cartoony in the most Disneyest of senses, while at the same time sort of being true to the story, at least the major parts of the story. So you see Ebenezer Scrooge go through the whole process of visiting the various ghosts, and even though there are some dark points to it, it always seems to give you that cartoony effect that you would expect. So it's kind of one of those particular shorts, and it's actually under half an hour. So they really do shorten the length as far as the story is concerned. So again, this may lack as far as development is concerned, but it sort of picks it up for it by being so creatively unique, especially again all of the characters that are in this. And the interesting thing too is they do little cameos as well, so it's not just kind of Mickey and Friends that got carried over. It's also other appearances from various Disney characters that you've probably seen before, and you will discover who those are if you choose to watch the special. So I think that's also a nice thing that Disney was able to do, at least. And really, overall, I think, despite its length of being fairly short, I think it still gives off a fairly good impression, because especially considering the fact that children's attention span may obviously be a lot shorter than adults, that would make sense that it would just try to strip a story of A Christmas Carol into a lot of shorter format. And I think here this is actually a really good way in which they sort of narrowed down the story, because you really do get the real comprehension of what the story is really about, and you ultimately see Scrooge change, and there's not a whole lot of complicated factors that go into it to try and get that sort of message across, I think, to the audience. So again, if you know of any kids that are maybe not necessarily as old, this is definitely one that I think does appeal to them, because again, it does try to shorten certain parts of the story and tries to provide a more simplistic version. But again, regardless of its simplicity, it still gives off a very, I think, overall good effect, because for a story that's been told so and so many times, it's interesting to see Disney's particular interpretation, because they kind of insert a lot of the things that I think people have come to know as far as Disney as a brand is concerned, and I think that's something that they wanted to bring sort of to the forefront, and I think that's what ultimately makes this particular short work. Is because of the combination of utilizing the story, utilizing the material that Disney has, and in doing so, producing a fairly well done piece. And all of the animation is something else that I wanted to touch on, because overall it's very impressive. And the interesting thing is it's cartoony in the sense that it obviously looks like the characters that we've seen in the old cartoons, but at the same time, you still feel like there's a little bit of a touch to it that makes it somewhat resemble A Christmas Carol. So in the beginning, they have kind of this sort of old-timey look to it. And again, the whole image and setting is also very reminiscent to A Christmas Carol. So again, they do carry on over the whole Disney characters and insert them into sort of this kind of more carol like setting, and or at least the time of the Christmas Carol being like around the 1800s. So I think that's really ultimately all I can say about it. It's fairly straightforward, and I think it is actually a rather enjoyable one, to say the least, and it's been highly rated, I think, and it's, again, I think also something that's fairly overlooked, because again, this did come out rather around a time, at least, when Disney wasn't really necessarily having a whole lot of material coming out. So I think it's fair to at least look at some things that at least they were doing. And I think this one in particular is a short that they did fairly well. And there's also some other shorts that I think also came around during that time period that were also very well produced as well. But again, I think that's really ultimately all I can say in regards to this particular short. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and wonderful holiday season, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.